Okay, this is going to be a detailed guide for Section 8 low-income subsidized housing and tax credits. We'll be covering the rules, costs, risk, and considerations. This will be for a perspective for both the tenant and the landlord. So if you're either party, this is the perfect video to watch. It will be candid from both perspectives. So now, for the intended purposes of this video, I'm going to go ahead and just show you definitions. There's a lot of confusion, and a lot of videos are made only showing you part of the much bigger picture. So let me switch over screen so you can see what we're talking about. Okay, so first thing we're going to start with is just the definitions of the different types of housing, okay? There is a tremendous amount of confusion about this, both from the tenant and the landlord. Section 8 vouchers are private landlords, okay? Whether they own an apartment or an apartment complex, but mostly just single dwelling units, okay? Now, for you as a tenant, you're required to pay anywhere from 30 to 40% of your income, okay? So just keep that number in mind, and the red indicates the most important parts of these definitions. Now, let's go down to low-income public housing. The first thing you should realize is both for individual and multifamily units, okay? So that's usually going to be buildings with more than a certain amount of units that are available, probably, over 8, and operated by the housing authority, okay? So this is not operated by an individual, it's the housing authority. For those of you that live in public housing, you have additional federal guidelines that kind of protect you. But at the same time, once court action's been taken, it runs through state rules and policies, okay? And so the tenants pay up to 30% of their income, okay? So you get a bigger advantage with the public housing because it doesn't require as much. So we know that the Section 8 is up to 40%. The low income tends to be up to 30%. And then you go on to subsidized housing, okay? And now this is going to address multifamily complexes. So we're the same thing, but much bigger entities, all the way down to medium size. And what it's going to do is it'll address incomes at or below 30 to 50%, okay? So your subsidized housing, which really would mean that you would pay up to 30%, but it starts at 0. That's where you end up with people that are paying $11 in rent. That situation ends up being good both for the tenant and the landlord, because you're guaranteed, pretty much guaranteed your money. We'll talk about that a little later. Now, the type of tenants you would likely get in the subsidized end of this is going to be the homeless, elderly, and disabled, okay? There's plenty of advantages, there's plenty of disadvantages, but, it doesn't matter whether you're dealing in Section 8 or not, or subsidized, simply because people are human, and it doesn't matter if they were actually a normal renter or somebody through the federal government, because people have problems and you just simply have to address them. Tax credit properties. Look, there's a long explanation behind this, so we're just going to narrow it down. You build a building and you guarantee the federal government that you're going to reserve, if it's a building's got 8 units, you're going to reserve 2 for the next 30 to 50 years for low-income people. And in return, the government is going to give you 6 to 9% tax credit. So if you paid $1 million, you're going to get 6 to 9% off of that in tax credit, and then that's it. That's the obligation's been met. Now you only have to rent to them. Now here's the deal: you're not guaranteed your money, okay? And because you're not guaranteed your money from the government, you have to get it from the tenant. So if the tenant doesn't pay, now from the tenant perspective, look, guys. Tax credit properties are not going to put up with anything, okay? First of all, they're going to want only the most qualified, the most stable, the people with the most stable jobs, because the government's not issuing them a check, okay? They're just saying they're going to guarantee, but they're only going to take the most highly qualified applicants. If you break any of the leases, rules, and policies, or unintended policies, then they're going to put you out, okay? As simple as that. There's just not much latitude there. And so that's all there really is with tax credit properties. So it's great to develop a big building, something nice. You throw in a few mixed apartments, but there's usually a lot of problems with tax credit properties wanting to lease to just about anybody. Okay, but that being said, I'm going to switch over back to me, and then we're going to discuss the actual definitions as we go through the advantages and disadvantages of dealing with Section 8, okay? So here we go. Okay, so we're going to address Section 8 specifically, okay? This is for both the tenant and the landlord, okay? So you can see it from both ends. Now, as we know, up to 30 or 40% of your income will go back to the landlord, okay? And beyond that, the government's going to cut a check to you as a landlord. And so if you're just starting with this program, then it could take up to 60 days, but you'll receive, more than one check to cover everything, okay? The payments are always generally going to be on time, and you don't have to worry about it. Let me explain something else for both the tenant and the landlord. Uh, they will tolerate up to about a year of mixed things happening where the tenant cannot pay. They're not making enough money, and so the government often will pick up 100% of the cost over a 12-month period, which is good for both the tenant and the landlord. I should tell the tenants, do not take advantage of that. Do not try to work that system, because if you do it and they decide that they don't want you in the program anymore, there's no coming back to it. Once you're out, you're out, and you're out in every state. There's no coming back to it, and we'll cover a little bit more of that. So yeah, landlords are protected. So you're almost virtually guaranteed your money, and as a tenant, you're almost guaranteed to get 100% of your rent paid when you do have problems. Okay, so the government is really actually trying to help you in that respect. Um, Now, everybody's put into a list, obviously, and that's why I explained the four different types: Section 8, low income, subsidized, and tax credit. Look, you tenants, when you go out there, you're applying at everything. You're not giving consideration to where you're applying. If you look at those definitions and how much the percentage that they're requiring you to pay, you need to ask, is this a tax credit property, or what they call an A listing? And those A listings, because you know that unless you're the most qualified person in the world, the landlord's really not going to want you there. They're going to find any reason whatsoever to get rid of you. And you know what? If you were the landlord, you would probably do the same thing. Same thing with subsidized low income in the Section 8, except with that, the threshold's much lower, and they're willing to tolerate more because they're guaranteed payment. Um, Now, one thing I'm going to tell the landlord when it comes to Section 8 is when you jump in the program, you need to discover, obviously, what the median income is for that area. And so if the rents are generally riding at around $750, then my suggestion is add $200 to that. The government will counter you, and then they will then give you the highest market rate. What you don't want to do is come in low, because the government's not going to counter and then give you a better price. So it's better to work yourself down. As a tenant, you should realize the reason that the rents are going to be market share, which means what everybody else is paying, is because landlords, they're running a business, and it's a risky business. And so, but then again, like I said, you're getting your rent at a very big discount. So, um, vacancies. This from a landlord perspective. People will pretty much beg and plead to get in your properties, okay? So you really are looking at it. Now, one thing I can say about both the tenant and the landlord when it comes to being able to get in these units quick and have a lot of applications, um, there aren't as many problems as you would think with tenants. A lot of situations go right, and the reason is because once one of these tenants, you get one of these guys evicted, they're out of the system. Okay, so you're not going to get a repeat offender where they trash your property, stuff like that. Somebody else has probably already been wrecked, and so they've been thrown out the program. So unless you are a new tenant, new to the program, which the landlords are going to be probing to figure out whether you're very new to this program, then you're, more than likely, unless you're going to turn into a person that's going to destroy everything in the house, then you should be okay. Um, Now, another thing I want to talk about is the delayed payments. Sometimes that occurs. It's an investment property. You should be looking at your numbers as a landlord over a year's period, okay? So things happen. I mean, that's just the way it goes, and we're also dealing with the government. Their inspections. Let me tell you something. If you're a landlord and you're going to invest in a property, you really need to make sure that you're inspecting your electrical, your plumbing, and everything in there. And one thing you really don't want to do is I see a lot of landlords go real cheap, okay? I understand you're trying to mitigate your risk, but if you're going to put in, let's discuss the one big problem I see. And I've serviced Section 8 properties before, and a lot of them, no matter how bad the neighborhood was, people maintain their units very well. But you're putting in mini blinds, big mistake. Those mini blinds get tore up. Let me tell you, the number one offender are going to be kids, okay? Kids are kids. They don't get it. And then you go in there and you put in $2 mini blinds. Are you kidding me? And then every time the kid's pushing the spring on them, it breaks. Okay, so you replace those constantly. Second big mistake with landlords, and you need to pay attention to this. You're putting in carpet. You're begging. You're just simply begging for a new bill every time somebody moves out. You need to go with tile and grout, preferably the big blocks that are easier to break. And then if you don't want to go to that, you can go through synthetic or fake flooring, which used to be called back in the old days linoleum, okay? But you don't want to put linoleum in because that stuff's not that great. But you have manufactured stuff that can go on the floor. The reason is because most tenants do care how the place looks and they want to keep it up. And same thing with you. You want to reduce your chances of wear and tear on the floors. That's something you don't have to pay for all the time. So you really need to stop with the carpet. Seriously, just put it through all the way through the house and just stop with the drama with the carpet cleaning it. It's a disaster, and most landlords that get it don't do it. Let's speak about doors real quick. Look, it's just unavoidable. You guys are putting, landlords are putting in cheap doors, and you get holes kicked in them, punch marks, stuff like that. Look, low-income people have a lot of problems. It's just a reality, just like normal people. And look, when you don't own something and you lose your bananas, things are going to happen. You know what? I used to tell some of the landlords I used to service the properties, put in solid wooden doors, okay? That way, when somebody loses their temper, they get paid back. Once they punch that door, the hand pays, and that lesson goes to the brain. That's very painful, okay? So yeah, putting in solid doors, no carpeting, solid floors, and quit putting in cheap stuff. That's just a reality. Let's move on. So they have very strict inspections. Look, if you pay for $100 or $150 inspection, they're going to want to make sure that there's no safety hazards. They're going to look at everything. So you need to keep your units in good condition, and quit trying to create ghetto properties by just not caring. Keep them in good condition. And it's just a really bad attitude behind that, and it makes your property very unattractive. And let me tell you something else. It's going to lower your ability to get the government to want to offer you the maximum amount. If you're running a slum, then they're going to give you slum prices. Delinquent payments for tenants. And you guys that are tenants, I told you, they give you up to, a year. They'll help you out infrequently. But, man, if you start disappearing and you're constantly going to not pay on time, evictions are immediate. Landlords, everyone that I've ever met, if you're a good tenant, you're not destroying everything, and you're not having people coming in and out. Landlords will pretty much work with you. But if you're that type of tenant, you're not gonna be sociable and develop a relationship with your landlord or your management company where they understand that you're acting in a normal manner. Then you can expect they're going to evict immediately. The first time a dollar is missing, they're going to put you out as quickly as possible. From a landlord perspective, you guys with new tenants the first time in the program, you need to be doing monthly inspections, period, okay? Let me explain why. First of all, you want to be able to detect the tenants that are going to be the ones that destroy apartments, okay? And you'll see their habits very quickly when things are always trashy and dirty and things of that nature. Another reason why is the biggest cost to landlords is water damage, okay? And a lot of times that's not because of the tenant. It's a failure in your own property. If you have a property that is older than the mid 90s to late 90s, then you're probably running off galvanized piping. And let me tell you something. Water can pool in the ceiling, okay? It can pool for days. If the sheetrockers did a good job and they floated that sheetrock well, that water can sit there and build up and build up and build up, and then about 5 days later, the whole thing comes down. Now, is it the tenant's problem? They didn't report it. Well, how the hell would they know? That's a lot of landlords just assume water's just going to come spewing out the second that it happens. It doesn't happen that way. Then you, as a landlord, become upset. You should have reported this. Well, hell, it just really happened. So you need to be doing your inspection, which means you need to be going up in the attic and through the property to ensure uh, to ensure that you're not going to have water problems. A lot of landlords are now switching to PECs. So you're begging for problems if you're not going to go up and change out your plumbing. Same thing with your electrical. You need to be inspecting that to making sure that everything is working in that respect. A failure means money, okay? So do you really want to meet a short inspection and then pay out a ton of money to an electrician, or do you want to address these issues as they go on where it's very minor? And the same thing with tenants. They're not going to want to put up with that long. Now, another thing I would like to cover is there is no compensation for damages, okay? And, like I said, the likelihood of you getting that, the 7% of people that are really going to wreck your property are pretty low. You're trying to filter them out from the start. And give you some advice. When you're interviewing tenants, make sure you're there before they are. Walk directly up to them to greet them at their car. That way you can look in there. If you see 2 feet of trash and garbage in the car, you can pretty much have the expectation that your property will get trashed. Calling the former tenants. Sometimes you can even, hey, you know what? You don't even need to come to me. I'll come drive to you. That way you can see where they currently live and then walk in the door. And it's as simple as that. Your expectation would be the same. So you have to be a little bit of an investigator to see where these people are going to go with things. Now, there's a difference between somebody that hoards a lot of stuff in the apartment but isn't making a big mess, okay? Um, Anytime that you're going to take a family with kids, you need to have the absolute expectation that there's going to be plenty of wear and tear, okay? Most of you have had kids, you realize the situation, and now imagine your life being 100 times more difficult where you're working all the time, and so the kids don't have as much instruction and training, and so you need to have latitude. If you're going to rent apartments to families with kids, then you need to realize that they're going to write on the wall. They may even kick holes in the wall. Look, it's just sheetrock. You can repair it. Now we're going to go through a situation where we're actually destroying the actual washer, the dryer, and everything else. Then you need to have that conversation from the beginning. Here's my expectations, okay? I understand there's going to be wear and tear, maybe even marks in the wall and all that. That's not going to be a big deal for us. What's going to be a big deal are these things, and just make sure you're clear about that. So when you start your monthly inspections, it's fine. And the same thing for you as a tenant. If you want to build a great relationship with your landlord, shoot them a couple of pictures once a month. Hey, man, look, this is the place. We're taking care of it. Everything's going good. I'm reporting any problems that are having, And another thing I'd like to cover is you guys are moving in as a new tenant, you're bringing a lot of people in and out these apartments, okay? So that can be viewed a lot of different ways. Look, landlords want to know what's going on in that property, okay? And they want to know because a lot of people get on Section 8 and they sublease their apartment to drug dealers. It's simple as that, okay? Let's all be honest with each other. They sublease it or they turn it into a junkie hotel. And the landlord, the real busy ones aren't aware of that. And so you have a flood of people coming in and out of there. Look, simple way to solve that is if you are an honest person, you're not involved in that, work out a deal with your landlord. And the same thing from the landlord's perspective, look, here's a list of my family, okay? I like to get these people approved. Here are my coworkers and here are a few of my close friends. I would like to get them approved. If you'd like to meet them the first time, whatever, let's do that, The reason is you're living in a different world when you're dealing with people when you're asking the government for help. When you ask for help, then you play by those rules. If you don't understand the concept of playing by the rules when you're asking for help, then you really are disenfranchised. You're delusional. If you think there are not going to be rules. If you think that you're going to operate as somebody normally renting an apartment, you're crazy. You're going to have to follow more rules. The reason is they've had 100 years to figure out this stuff. So another thing you can do, if you are a tenant and you're going to have people that is unexpected and never seen by the landlord, is just, call them and say, look, Mary Beth's coming over. She's a close friend of mine at church or whatever. And I just want to let you know or see if I can just get an approval for this person, You guys are just doing whatever you want as a tenant. That doesn't work. That doesn't equate. It's still it's still the landlord's property, which means he has the right to determine who comes in and out of it, if anybody. Just because you rent it doesn't mean you can control it, okay? So with all these things being said, Section 8 is almost a guaranteed payment. It's good for the tenant. It's good for the landlord. And then you have some of the other ones where you deal with the homeless, the elderly, and all that. All these things have advantages. The tax credit to properties are the toughest to get in. So with all that being said, both sides need to be very vigilant and build that relationship. And when you're out there and you're applying for the properties, the first question out of your mouth shouldn't be how much is the rent. It should be what kind of property is this? Because I really, if you're dealing with tax credits, don't waste your time. Seriously. Okay? Just don't do it. Unless you're at the top echelon of almost not needing the government, why waste your time with that? Okay? So, and let me tell you another thing about low income housing, Section 8 and all this. The better looking the unit, the more the demand. You want to get in somewhere fast and you're okay with a property that's older, there's going to be less demand for it, and you're going to have a much better chance, okay? I've made a lot of different videos that can tell you how to get approved for all these different types of housing, their policies. You can see the rule book, you can see their operation manuals, and get into these programs much quicker than the average person walking in the front door, okay? With that being said, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you like it, like it. Hey, if you hate this, tell me in the comment, hey man, you know what, you're a rodeo clown. I just don't care for it. Other than that, folks, we'll see you later. Bye-bye.